that what Governor Bush has done during the course of this campaign is to reflect what he has done as governor of Texas. And I think it's right for a presidential campaign, it's right for the Republican Party, and I think it's right for America, because that's where the majority of Americans are. They don't want scorched earth policies that are eviscerating government programs, but what they want is a much more efficient, effective government that reflects their concerns and problems.
Do you see this party moving to the center?
I don't, Margaret, but if Olympia feels it is and that makes her feel better, that's okay with me. Look, the polling data shows that the majority of the American people are conservative or slightly right of center. And this platform is profoundly conservative. It's unambiguously pro-life, it's pro-family, it's in favor of educational choice, in favor of a missile defense system. I'm a little disappointed, quite frankly, that it wasn't as strong on the Department of Education issue. But this is a conservative platform, and I don't think anybody's going to have any confusion on Election Day who the liberal candidate is, his name's Al Gore, and who the conservative candidate is, that's George Bush.
So when people look at this convention tonight and they see this more centrist face, I mean, is it all just about image, or is there something deeper going on? Do you agree with Senator Snowe?
I think there is something deeper going on, but let me differentiate what it is. Republicans for a long time, when I was a kid and before, said that lots of things were simply not the province of government. That was our response. No. What George W. Bush is doing, and what this Republican convention is doing, is saying, all right, we concede issues like education, poverty, and housing, a whole lot of things are the proper province of some kind of public response. But it's not the same kind of response you're going to get out of the Democrats. We're not going to talk about creating big, new, centralized bureaucracies. But this candidate, really for the first time as a Republican, is coming forward saying, yes, we're ready to compete with the Democrats on which party can best provide policies that educate America, house America, provide for America's health. That is a difference. But where I agree with Gary is we're not embracing liberal solutions to those problems. We're putting forward new solutions based on decentralization, individual empowerment, and market mechanisms.
You know what's interesting about all that? Governor Bush has been a governor, and you don't put ideological labels on solutions to problems. Rather, you look towards what practical solutions can be developed for the problems facing the people of a particular state, in this case, Texas. It's what works. So it could be a conservative idea, it could be a liberal idea, it could be an independent idea. The question is, you know, whether or not it works, because governors have to make it work. And the same is true for a president, and I think Governor Bush recognizes that.
See, and Governor Thompson even said that this document is meant to reflect Governor Bush's view that government can be a partner. Now, the party used to be very critical of federal government role in anything. Are you comfortable with this?
Well, no, I mean, look, there were a lot of things we thought the federal government could do and should do, but we certainly have opposed for 30 years a massive expansion of the federal bureaucracy in Washington, and we continue to oppose that. I think education's a good area. I think Al Gore's solution will be, well, I'll double the size of the education department budget. Republicans are much more likely to say, you know what, we'll give parents a voucher or a tuition tax credit so that they've got more authority in the kind of schools they're sending their children to. Those are diametrically opposed solutions to education problems.
Or the governor talking about a solution to poverty that brings in faith-based institutions and other non-governmental organizations. Government has a role to play there in coordinating, maybe even in providing resources, but it's utilizing mechanisms that are non-governmental, which is something Democrats are allergic to. For them, it has to be a big government solution in Washington.
Now, one issue on which the conservatives won in the platform had to do with abortion. We just heard Governor Thompson say very clearly Governor Bush doesn't agree with some of those positions. What is your expectation about President Bush if he were elected and he got his first Supreme Court appointment to make?
I think he'll do as he has said during the course of the campaign, and not impose a litmus test on a judicial appointment, which I think is a major departure from the party platform. And he has said that he will depart from the platform. His positions and his views are, you know, not entirely consistent with the platform, and in the case of abortion. So I think that that is true. And that's
but I mean, is your expectation that he will? He has said Scalia and Rehnquist are, I think it's, or Scalia and Thomas are his two most admired Supreme Court justices. So in terms of whether it's a litmus test or not, what is really your expectation about, you're pro-choice, I know. What is your expectation
Well, my expectation is that he will obviously select the best qualified candidate that does not necessarily comport with his views on the issue of abortion. I feel that he will not drive this issue ideologically. And secondly, I think that obviously, I think he's going to be well aware of the fact that a Supreme Court appointment in this instance could undercut the Roe v. Wade decision. And I frankly can't visualize America, with all due respect to the positions that are reflected here, without the Roe v. Wade decision.
All right, now what's your expectation?
I dream at night about an America in which 1.5 million children are part of the American family. And my expectation is that Governor Bush is a man of his word. During the campaign and the debates that I took place in, he repeatedly said that he wanted all of our children welcomed into the world and protected by the law. I can remember the words because I used them first, and I believe if you want children protected under the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, you've got to put pro-life judges on the courts.
So it sounds as if people at this table and in the hall have some very different expectations about the government.
Well, look, I agree with Gary on the issue of abortion, but I also am aware of the fact that Presidents Reagan and Bush appointed Justices Thomas, Rehnquist, and Scalia, but also Justices Souter, O'Connor, and Kennedy. Be there litmus tests or not, it's very hard for a president to actually enforce views on a Supreme Court justice, and the Republican appointees of the past administrations have shown that. I think Governor Bush is going to try to appoint conservative justices. I hope that they are pro-life justices, but I think we aren't going to be able to predict that any more than we could with Ronald Reagan or George Bush.
Every judge that Bill Clinton has put on the federal courts, from the top level to the bottom, is pro-abortion and pro-gay rights. They're serious about their judicial appointments.
Right.
I'm going to be very disappointed if my party and our next Republican president isn't just as serious about his appointments.
But it's interesting to note that the judicial appointments in the past, as Ben has mentioned, we did not know their positions on specific issues, including abortion.
We should make sure.
No, I think that's the right approach. I think that's the one the American people would embrace.
I want no bigots on the courts. We should always ask a judge, do you believe in the equal protection of the laws for all Americans, regardless of race? Because that's an important issue, and we ought to ask them whether or not they believe our children are part of the American family.
Obviously, Governor Bush doesn't agree with you.
Let me ask one final thing. At Governor Bush's direction, he talked about this in his interview with the New York Times yesterday, there are no what you might call hard-edged conservatives speaking in prime time for this entire convention. No pro-life spokesman, no spokesman for sort of cultural values, family values. Does that bother you?
Well, Margaret, this party is a conservative party. I mean, when you walk among the delegates and talk to them, I wouldn't describe them as hard-edged. I would describe them as principled. And on election day...
So does it bother you that the viewing public isn't going to see that?
Well, it's not my convention. It's his convention, and he'll make a judgment about what's best to bring more people to his banner. But he can't win on election day unless the conservative base of this party is on fire. Right now it is on fire, and I trust that his campaign will keep them on fire.
The conservative base has one huge motivating factor, and that's Al Gore. But Governor,
so in other words, it's about winning.
Governor Bush has reassured those folks through a long... Remember, he's been leading Al Gore for almost 2 years in the polls. He has had a lot of time to go in and talk to those folks and for them to come to a negative or positive conclusion, and they're really for him. They think that they know where he stands, they understand what his agenda is, and they understand that it's a much broader agenda even than we've been talking about around this table, and they're going to stick with him.
And you don't think they're going to feel let down?
No, I don't think so. Part of it, Margaret, I must say, is the media's stereotype that has been created over many years of who these so-called Christian right voters are. They're actually people a lot like you and me.
All right. Thank you all three very much.
Thank you, Margaret.
News organizations are here in force to cover this convention, and media correspondent Terrence Smith looks behind their scenes.
There's a different look to this year's convention. Among the skyboxes that used to be the private preserve of the broadcast networks, there are some new names. Upstarts like Pseudo.com and established internet providers like America Online. They represent the future, the links to a virtual convention that more and more Americans are expected to log on to this week.
The internet, I think, is going to soar as the medium for this and other kind of political events because it can allow people to determine for themselves, allow voters to determine for themselves what their experience is going to be.
Kathleen Dulaski is Director of Political and Government Programming for AOL, which attracts some 16 million visitors a month to its news websites. That number is greater than the combined daily circulation of the top 20 American newspapers, but still smaller than the 25 million who watch the 3 evening news broadcasts on any given night. Close to 1,000 news organizations here are reporting on their own websites, and some 35 others exist solely on the web and occupy the workspace known as Internet Alley.
Tape standing by, right, Mike?
They are stepping into the void created in part by the decision of the big 3 television networks to cut back staff and coverage of this year's conventions.
My cable is long enough.
These quadrennial political festivals used to be considered great television. The first televised convention was here in Philadelphia in 1948, when the Republicans nominated Thomas Dewey.
I am honored by your
As recently as 1976, the 3